Animal cognition has long been a subject of study that has encompassed a multitude of fields, and at the center of it there lies this concern as to whether or not non-human animals have rights, and the answer is simply that they don't. Now, over time, the concept of animal rights has been molded kind of into this thing that we happily accept that, of course, animals have rights, but this concept of rights has become confused and synonymous with the way that we treat non-human animals. Now, this argument is not intended to be used as an excuse to, treat animals in any way we want. I still acknowledge them as living beings that deserve to be treated with respect, but it's not because they have the right to be treated so. It's what we, as humans, have a moral obligation to treat animals ethically because we have rights and the moral capabilities that they do not possess. And this can kind of be explained in three parts. First off, unlike humans, non-human animals, they lack a perception of self. They're also unable to respect the rights of others. And then lastly, the concept of human right is essentially human. Now, animals themselves are not really conscious. Like non-human animals, we are able to feel sensation, emotion, and desire, but unlike non-human animals, we have a consciousness of self. And as put by Rene Descartes, they are no more than complicated biological robots, and that means that they do not have a function outside of their immediate need. So non-human animals are unable to have a conscious self and cannot distinguish between their self and other, past and future, possible and impossible. And in Scruton's The Conscientious Carnivore, he states that we act and think in terms of a distinction between the world as it is and the world as it seems. Our ability of self-perception allows us to make choices based on conscious evaluations, which rely heavily on our concept of right and wrong. And the ability of self-perception and the lack thereof in non-human animals can ultimately lead to the assumption that animals are then unable to respect the rights of others because they lack the concept of moral rights and wrongs. So now, you can argue that a dog knows not to pee inside or bite the hand that feeds them, but this isn't based on the dog's moral evaluation of their choices. It comes only from conditioning and positive and negative rewards, because they lack the ability to discern the moral right from wrong. They cannot be considered moral beings. And as Scruton points out, to appoint non-human animals as moral beings would be cruel. It places a sort of expectation on them to adhere to moral obligations and duties that they don't have the faintest ability to recognize. And there is no such occasion where rights are able to exist without duties. In fact, in Cohen's critique of the alleged moral basis of vegetarianism, he describes this exact logical confusion. You can't have a symmetrical reciprocity of obligations and rights, since following that logic doesn't retain its truth both ways. As Cohen states, all dogs are mammals and, all rights entail obligations, but the symmetrical reciprocity would then claim all mammals are dogs and all obligations entail rights. Now, lastly, we look at how the concept of human right is essentially human. Rights are unique to human beings because not only are we moral agents, but we also operate within a moral community, and which, according to Warren, is a set of beings with full moral rights and consists of all and only persons. Therefore, rights only have a meaning within a moral community, and since humans are the only ones that live in a moral community, it can be said that animals don't have rights. The way we experience the world in our community are done so according to moral code, and the differences in the way we experience it from non-human animals are morally relevant. As outlined by these 3 points, we can see that animals do not in fact have moral rights due to their lack of self-perception, inability to respect the rights of others, and that the concept of right is essentially human. But as stated before, rights do not exist without obligations or duties, so even though animals don't possess rights, we have a moral obligation to continue to treat them ethically and with respect.